All right, President Trump's political sway does not seem to have worked for at least one candidate in Georgia. CBS News projects Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones has lost yesterday's gubernatorial runoff, and that's despite winning the president's endorsement. Billionaire healthcare executive Rick Jackson is expected to advance after one of the most contentious Republican primary battles in Georgia's history. Both candidates addressed their supporters last night.
Looks like we're going to come up a little short here tonight. And that's unfortunate, but we had a great election day. You just didn't have enough runway to get it all the way there.
Tonight, you made your voice heard loud and clear. Tonight, we did more than win a runoff. Tonight, we proved the people of Georgia are in charge.
Jackson will now face Democrat Keisha Lance Bottoms in the race for Georgia governor. In a statement released last night, she said, quote, "Georgians deserve a governor who is focused on ensuring they have every opportunity to thrive and who will fight for them when Donald Trump's reckless policies hurt Georgia," end quote. CBS News political director Fin Gómez has been closely following all these races, as you all well know by now. He joins us now with his take. Good morning, Fin. So this is interesting. A Trump-backed candidate fell short in the GOP race for governor, but not in the Senate primary. What should our viewers make of it all?
Well, I think Georgia Republicans, as you saw there, delivered a split verdict on the president's influence in these Republican contests. The Trump-backed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones lost in this runoff against outsider Rick Jackson, handing the president his second loss this primary cycle of endorsed candidates. You remember Iowa, his candidate there in that gubernatorial race lost. But in the Senate runoff, Trump got the results he wanted, with Congressman Mike Collins defeating former football coach Derek Dooley, who was backed by Governor Brian Kemp, the popular Republican governor in the state. The biggest takeaways for me, Errol, is that Kemp, who has been talked about as a potential 2028 contender, had two major losses in his state, but also that Georgia voters, at least in this governor's runoff, are following a narrative we've seen all year, in that there's a thirst for outsider candidates in this cycle. We saw that with Rick Jackson, and we've seen it across the country. And I think Jackson's victory was also fueled in part by an unprecedented amount of self-funding. He topped more than $100 million of his own money in his successful bid last night, while Collins was already well positioned with the MAGA base in the state, and Dooley just didn't seem to catch fire with that base. It does set up a pivotal matchup between Collins and incumbent Senator Jon Ossoff for a Senate battleground race, Errol, that could determine which party controls the Senate. Last night, Collins had this to say after he won.
None of this would have been possible without you, Lee, and thank you. I also want to thank my staff and all of our convoy captains out there. Y'all give us a round of applause to them. But I want to thank Derek, because he ran a spirited campaign. And I want to thank Governor Kemp for his leadership and his friendship over the years.
Errol, raising some eyebrows there in Georgia because Collins did not thank or mention President Trump. It might show an indication of what part of his general election strategy may be in what has really become a top purple state, and one of the most, I think I would consider the perennial battleground every single cycle. Georgia is always up for grabs, and it seems to be now as well. It's going to be a top race.
Really interesting details there, Fin. Let's talk about the high-stakes D.C. mayoral race. You got Democratic Socialist Janice Louis George declaring victory. CBS News has not yet projected a winner in this race, but what's the trend line?
With 64% of the vote counted, yes, Louis George, a self-described Democratic Socialist, has taken a substantial lead over fellow council member Kenyon McDuffie, a Democrat in the Democratic primary for D.C. mayor. Though the AP has yet to call the race, Louis George holds a roughly 16-point lead over McDuffie. But because the District of Columbia has an overwhelmingly Democratic electorate, the primary effectively serves as the general election. in the federal city. If you recall, though, Errol, what's generating a lot of attention when asked last week about the prospect of a Louis George win, President Trump suggested he would consider a federal takeover of the city under the Home Rule Act of 1973, saying that he wouldn't like it and maybe will take back Washington and run it on a federal basis, saying that he would not put up with it. And if you recall, Errol, under the Constitution, Congress holds ultimate authority over the federal city. Among other powers, it can overturn D.C. laws, as it did back in 23 when it nullified a D.C. crime bill, controlled the district's budget process, and repealed the Home Rule Act, which allowed D.C. to elect its own mayor and city council. But repealing the Home Rule Act would return governing authority of the district to Congress, which is currently controlled by the Republican Party. Last year, if you recall, the president invoked Section 740 of the Home Rule Act to place D.C. police under federal control and deployed National Guards to the city, which was the first time a president had used that provision. So it could get very interesting here if she does win, as it appears she will. Errol?
All right, we'll keep reporting it out as the votes are tallied. Fin, thank you very much.